Hello, and welcome to Monster of the Week, the show where we dig up old creatures from past editions of Dungeons & Dragons and convert them for use into 5th edition D&D. Today we are going to be talking about the notoriously massive marrow-filled mutt, the Charnel Hound. Aptly named after the idea of a charnel house, which is essentially a building constructed out of bones of the fallen for whatever stupid weird bullshit humans decided to do, because for some reason we used to build structures out of bones. But borderline insane practices of humanity from the past aside, these creatures are pretty awesome. Basically, just imagine a dog, except it's literally huge size, so it stands up to about 30 feet tall, give or take a few feet. Literally. Its entire body is made up of other bodies. That's right, it's got a body of bodies, a body of decomposing dead. Some might be straight up skeletons, some might still be rotting away, but the point is you take a bunch of dead dudes and you make them into a giant body that looks like a dog, and then you animate it and you got yourself a Charnel Hound. Sounds like something everyone should totally want to do. Especially necromancers though. However, I am getting a bit ahead of myself here. Today we're going to talk about just exactly what this creature can do in combat, and then go over some plot hooks and ways that you can actually use it in your D&D game. So first things first, let's talk about some. So like most undead, these guys function in a way that is absolutely horrific and meant to instill fear with everything they do. Their primary attacks come in the form of a very powerful bite and 2 big claws. Pretty standard stuff. They've also got the rend trait, which means that if they hit with both of those claw attacks on the same person, they're going to try to rip them in half, which means they're going to do a little extra damage, and if they actually succeed on reducing someone to 0 hit points when they've rended them, well, that person's gonna have a bad time. And of course, they wouldn't be a terrible creature made up of many corpses if they didn't do some horrific stuff with those corpses. So the first thing on our list of horrors that they can do is an ability called Ungodly Howl. Basically, they just cause all the mouths of the bodies that make up their body to open up and screech. So cool, super scary, and it causes everyone within 60 feet of them to become frightened of the Charnel Hound. I mean, if you weren't already frightened by the 30-foot dog made out of all the dead people from your town, then I don't know what to tell you. But mechanically, you become frightened of it, meaning you can't move closer to it until you can pass your save. And if you fail that save by 5 or more, you're also getting paralyzed, so that sucks too. It is, of course, also able to absorb more bodies into its form, so if it hits someone and reduces them to 0 hit points, it can scoop that person up and suck them into its body, and then they just become part of the Charnel Hound's mass of corpses. This, of course, kills the target immediately instead of allowing them to have death saving throws. And if you want to bring that person back to life, you have to kill the Charnel Hound so that you can find its body amidst the wreckage, so to speak. Doing that also does heal the Charnel Hound, so it would behoove this creature to try to take out the weakest people first and move its way up the food chain. Now, the last ability I want to talk about is one that I actually added. This is not in the base creature stat block, but I just thought it was kind of neat, and I figured why wouldn't it be able to do this? And that is an ability I called Spawn Undead. It's on a recharge of 5 to 6, meaning that it can't do this every single round unless it gets really lucky. And this ability allows it to shed 4 of the bodies that make up part of its massive form and turn those creatures into animated zombies or skeletons, depending on what you deem most appropriate. If it spawns undead in this way, they last for 1 minute before the necrotic energy kind of fades and returns back to the hound, where they just collapse and begin rotting, presumably. All in all, this thing's a pretty massive threat, and if you've got this at the center of any large undead-focused encounter, or even just as a solo encounter by itself, it's going to be pretty powerful. It does, however, have one weakness though, and that is its aversion to sunlight. If the Charnel Hound should ever find itself in an area of sunlight, it has disadvantage on all attack rolls. So it would be a lot less deadly for sure, and that means that one of your spellcasters has a good excuse to prep daylight if they know they're going to be fighting one of these things, or just try to encounter it during the day if they can make that happen for themselves. And that just about wraps up everything you want to do with this creature in a fight, so let's take a look at some. So the first thing I thought of, which I'm sure many of you are thinking right now as you watch this, is that these creatures would make amazing guardians for a necromancer. And in fact, the book that these creatures come from specifies that they are often created to be used literally as giant guard dogs for people who control necromantic magic. So you're talking about your liches and your necromancers and everything in between. In fact, it's actually considered a pretty immense achievement when a necromancer is able to create one of these things, because it's so difficult to bond all the proper magic to all these corpses and make them kind of form into this amalgamation. So not only are they a powerful guardian, but they can also be sort of a prestige or status symbol among necromancers. The hounds themselves are of animalistic intelligence, so that would suit the role very easily for them to be literally a guard dog for a powerful enemy. Or maybe we even have a friendly necromancer who has one of these things and it's just kind of meant to build their character a bit more. Just as a way to show your players through the actual reality of the world you're creating that, oh, this guy who we are allies with and should try to remain allies with is quite powerful because he was able to create one of these things. Something else really interesting about these creatures is what happens to them when they're set loose. I mean, they're definitely created by someone. These are not creatures that will ever occur naturally in the world. But if that person who created them is killed or for some reason loses control over the Charnel Hound, it basically reverts to acting almost like a wild dog. It will simply set out, roam the plains, and just kind of look for people to kill and add to its body of bodies. If there are multiple Charnel Hounds, they might even form a pack together. And it's kind of neat because they hate being in direct sunlight, so they're obviously nocturnal predators, not because they need to sleep, but just because it causes them immense pain to be in the sun. So they often find their homes on vast plains or in mountainous areas where they can burrow and just kind of wait out the sun during the day and then emerge at night and go look for more people to kill. That right there could be a very good quest line for a party if you just want to throw like kind of a random side quest at them where these giant things have been coming and harassing local towns or villages in the night, and the party is tasked with going out and taking them down. Maybe someone very important has been taken and killed by one of these things and they have to go destroy it and retrieve that person's body so the local priest can resurrect them before the 7 days or whatever the time limit is on the spell runs out. Or again, that's a perfect excuse to just throw these guys at your party as sort of a random encounter while they're adventuring through a brand new area and they're not really familiar with the giant undead dogs that haunt the burrows of the mountainside. And the final way that I could think about using these creatures I want to talk about today is sort of as messengers. I mean, they do have an animalistic intelligence, but if you wanted to play with that a little bit, you could say one of them was maybe created with a higher mind, so it's a more intelligent undead. And it could still be a direct guardian or minion of a more powerful necromancer, but you could use these guys almost as messengers. I mean, no one's gonna mess with this giant 40-foot tall hound dog made out of bodies that's roaming across the land. So maybe it just gets where it needs to get to, delivers its message, and then leaves. It would definitely be much more ominous than your party simply receiving a letter in the mail to have one of these things show up. And that's pretty much everything I've got to say about the Charnel Hound today. If you do like this creature and you want to use it in your game, in the description below, there is a link to the stat block, which is in the form of a Google document, which will contain everything you need to run this creature. And if you are one of my awesome patrons, you can find the Monster Manual style Patreon stat block on my Patreon page, which has some art and a little bit of extra lore and that kind of thing. And if you're not one of my patrons, I would highly recommend checking it out. It's $3 a month. You get a fancy schmancy monster stat block whenever we do one of these videos, as well as some insights to kind of other things that I'm working on. And also lately I've been doing a project where I'm trying to make a new subclass for every D&D class that exists. Eventually this will be a published product, but for now, all of my patrons at any level get access to playtesting and kind of seeing the new subclasses as they come out. So if that interests you, there it is. Today's video was a little bit shorter than usual. I'm trying out some new formats and ideas for how I can get these videos out faster, more reliably. I have a tendency to talk for a super long time when I make these things, which is exactly what I'm doing right now. So let me know what you think about that. Let me know what your thoughts and feelings are. If you do like the super long form videos where I just kind of go really in depth on things when it comes to monsters, let me know. I'm kind of in the process of deciding whether I want to keep this series kind of shorter weekly videos or if I want to maybe do a bi-weekly and kind of have like a big 20-minute long video. So I don't know. We'll see. Let me know what you think about that. In any case, thank you so much for watching. I truly do appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video. Until then.